Thank you so much for agreeing to have me here. It's a pleasure. I'm just going to start off with a few statistics just to give you an overview of where we're at. So in 2009, the employment rate, and this is the employment participation rate for Aboriginal people, was about 57% in Canada, compared to about 61% for non-Indigenous. 62, 63%, that's a pretty common rate across the country for employment participation, so that's kind of a baseline. However, it has certainly, in Ontario at least, as of this last year, it's now actually gone up to about 62%, so it's actually much better the last 10 years, and I like to think that one of the reasons for that is programs like ours. So, and another example, just to give you something, so Indigenous learners and what we call literacy and basic skills. We've seen an increase in the Kenora district of about 20% over the last year. So people they're wanting to upskill, they're wanting to sort of, make improvements, they want to do better for themselves in general. Most people in life do, so that's a great thing to see. Other thing too is that as of 2016 census, just under 20% of the population in Dryden identifies as Aboriginal. And to put that into comparison, 20 years ago it was just under 5%. So it's been a huge part of our community here now, right? So I just want to give you some rough overview of that. And just another quick overview of the unemployment rate in the district. Dryden is actually a little bit, historically this is not bad for Dryden. It's a little bit on the high side. As an employment counselor for me, that's a little bit on the high side. But it's about average for Dryden. We're a little bit high compared to the rest of the district, but that's where we're at, 7.9%. And another final statistical slide. It's kind of small, but this is basically, is in terms of total numbers, where people are basically working in the Kenora district in terms of profession and industry. So as you can see, community service workers, which is kind of what I would be classified as, we're actually probably in the top. Retail, janitors, building supervisors is quite high, food counter attendants, transport truck drivers, and you can it goes down further, right? So that's just sort of an employment snapshot of kind of where people are working. And this is the Kenora district overall, so in northwestern Ontario. So it's comparable in some ways to the rest of Canada, a little bit higher focus on the social services and the retail, but yeah, so that's sort of where we're at. So, the Apatisiwin Program, who are we? And who do we serve? So, as Ed mentioned, we are funded through what is called the Aboriginal Skills, Employment, and Training Strategy. It's actually, as of April 1st, now called ISETS, the I being Indigenous instead of Aboriginal. And basically, it's basically the federal strategy for Aboriginal employment in the country. So across the country, there's around 600 delivery sites. We have a contract. There's several people who have the contract in Ontario to do it. The Ontario Federation of Indigenous Friendship Centres, the OFIFC, that's who we belong to. We have the largest one in Ontario. We're not the only one in Ontario, but we're the largest. So we have a total of 26 local service delivery sites, of which one is the Dryden Native Friendship Centre. So, and we are basically, as I said, the largest network basically in the province for education and employment for urban Indigenous. We provide one-to-one supports, resources. We connect clients to a wide range of training, employment, education opportunities, and we help people that are unemployed or underemployed. And underemployed, you may not be familiar with that term or not. Basically, to give you an example, someone who maybe is only working part-time hours, or they have a greater skill than the job level they're working in. So they're trained as a truck driver, but they're working at Tim Hortons. That would be someone who's underemployed, right? So it's a bit of a broad definition. So we deal with both people, both kinds of sort of clients. So what do we do? So I call this the usual plus because the plus is the essence of what we do, and I'll get into that in the next slide. But basically, we do the same kind of things that they do over at Northwest Employment Works. In fact, we work quite closely with them. Intake, we do a full-on assessment. We have a lot of different services at our agency, and so we do a lot of internal referrals to other services. We're just in the process, actually, of opening up a clinic. But we do job search advice. We can, it could be something as simple as, hey, I just want to apply to Tim Hortons. I just need a little bit of help with my resume. No problem, right? It could be something more complex. Hey, I want to get into nursing. I want to get into truck driving. We will help them do a plan. We'll reach out to employers. We'll give them advice on educational options and training things, and what we call integrated case management, which is basically saying that we work with other service providers, Northwest Employment Works, 7 Generations, Educational Institute, and just overall we kind of come up with a plan for them. So it's not just a case that they come in and we send them on their way. We work with them several times and get a plan in place for them and help them sort of get through it. So provide them a lot of support with that. But the plus part is employment and training supports, which is basically the government way of saying money. And this is really where our program can really be of great help, both to employers and to clients. We can do a variety of things. I've summarized the most common ones. There's a few others I haven't listed here. One of the big ones we can do is a wage subsidy. So if you're an employer and you want to hire on someone, one of our clients or someone who identifies that would be eligible for our services, we can provide a wage subsidy, and I'll go into that in a little bit next slide, just to help sort of overcome, some of the costs of training people, bring them on board. It's kind of an incentive to employers, and we do have several of those on the go at the moment. We can also provide clients training costs. So for example, I have a client that wants to do their heavy equipment course, heavy equipment certification, and we're paying for that for them. I have another client who's just in the process of finishing his last term of his business diploma. So we helped him pay for the tuition, and we got him a laptop and just helped him support him through that process. We can also provide clothing or other support. So an example, pair of work boots. We have clients that get jobs over at ACT Labs, or they get a job somewhere else, and they need anti-slip shoes, or they're working at Tim Hortons. We can provide for that as well. And apprenticeship support, which I'll go into in a little bit as well. We can also provide a subsidy to people who are apprenticing. So the subsidy again is to the employer, to the person who's seeing them. And we can also provide other training dollars for that as well. We have a self-employment intervention as well. If someone wants to start up a small business, to give an example, perhaps they want to do a lawn mowing business or something, we can provide some of the marketing support, money for marketing documents, and some initial sort of wage to get them for the first few months. We can provide some capital on a small scale. So not a lot of money, but we can provide some basic supplies to help them sort of get going, right? And we also have youth employment training support. So we also have, my colleague Kevin is the youth employment counselor at our center, and he has a variety of tools that are very youth specific. We can do what's called a stay in school intervention, which basically we give people some support, some school supplies, other things, other coaching and counseling on a weekly basis to kind of help them complete their education, get through high school basically. We work very closely with 4 Directions over at the school board. And we also can do youth internships as well. So, yeah, so a variety of things. So who do we serve? And this is an important distinction because our mandate and the mandate of the Ontario Federation of Indigenous Friendship Centres is we serve the urban Indigenous population. And urban doesn't necessarily mean a big city, it just means not reserve, basically, right? So about half of the Indigenous in Canada do not live on a reserve. So there's a huge need for services for them. So basically, if they live anywhere, in our case, in the Dryden district, which includes Ignace and Vermilion Bay, Sea Lookout has its own district, as does Red Lake. But anyone who's in the Dryden district, we can serve. If they're unemployed or underemployed, basically, they're an eligible client for us. Now, this is for the support budget. Anyone is welcome to just basic job search help with us. We welcome anybody. So you don't have to be Indigenous to get the general job search help from me, but this is for the training supports budget. Eagle Lake and Wabigoon also have their own access to funds through Shunya. It's another organization. So they also have similar funding as well. So the wage subsidy, just to do a quick overview of this, we officially call it the on-the-job training intervention. The government loves euphemisms. MERCs, to give an example, yeah, so exactly. So MERCs, to give an example, what a MERC is, just a definition, because I'll use that word. It's basically the mandatory employment-related cost. So it's the worker, as an employer, you have to pay your CPP premiums, your EI portion premiums, the employer portion, right? So for private sector, we can cover half the wage. There's some guidelines on this in terms of the local wage rate, depending on the profession, but we have some flexibility. We can pay half the wage and half of the MERCs. So for public sector, so that would be like the hospital, government, anything like that, we can do half the wage and 100% of the MERCs. And if you're a nonprofit, we can do 100% of both. So to give an example, we have the Dryden Volunteer Recruitment and Referral Center, which just actually changed their name. We actually have a person working over there that we're able to fund completely. So the length of time we can do it for varies. We can do it for up to a year. We don't always. It kind of depends on the situation. So we can do it for a short term. We can do it for a longer term. We kind of look at the client, the employer, and kind of decide what we think is an appropriate level of support. So it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. Apprenticeship, which I mentioned earlier, 60% of wages and MERCs, plus we can help with additional training costs. So for that 2-month portion they have to do for each year, we could potentially pay them or cover the costs of that. We could help them potentially with tools if they need to get tools for their apprenticeship or something. And we can assist with that. The other thing that's going on is that Safety Matters Driver Training, which is just next door here, they're bringing in a pre-apprentice program for welding and for carpentry in the next few months. So the cost of that program would be another example of something we could cover. And we could do a combination. We could perhaps do a combination of paying for that and providing some support to the employer to hire them. So we can kind of work in combination. Again, we look at the situation, we look at both the intentions of both parties and kind of make a decision. So yeah, so it's paid directly to employers basically. The other big thing that we do is training support. And so the guidelines in our book basically state it's the last year of any college or university program, or basically up to a year or less. So in practice, some examples I mentioned we have a client completing the last semester of his business diploma. He did the first 3 and then had to drop out for some family reasons a couple years ago, wanted to complete it, right? We were able to help him with that. And we're also working on trying to find him a summer job internship this summer as well. Another client wants to do their AZ truck license training in Thunder Bay. We also have a group of clients right now. We've organized a heavy equipment course, and they're taking that. We have 10 clients that are currently registered in that course. And another example is the PSW program. That's about a 6-7 month program through 7 generations. So we have a client. We actually have 2 clients currently doing that. And we can provide materials in supportive training as well. So for example, we can get a laptop, school supplies, anything that's we think is relevant. It's going to help them with their learning, help them get through school and be successful at the other end. So we can have we have some budgets for that as well. And the other thing too, although we are very client focused, we're happy to work with employers. If you want to help us and you're willing to hire some of our clients and you think you're interested in doing so, we are more than happy to try and work with you. We don't mind posting jobs. We'll reach into our database. We work very closely with Northwest Employment Works, as I mentioned. And basically, if you're willing to make a win-win relationship with us, we are happy to try and do that, right? So we're happy to come up with a solution. If you think, hey, I think I'm interested in this, what do you have? Give us some time, we'll find something. We'll find a way that we can work together. It's always our goal, to try and find a solution in a way that we can work together for the mutual benefit of our community, for the client, and everybody. And as I said before, we do work very closely with other community partners. Northwest Employment Works, we have a very good relationship with them. We refer clients back and forth and work on things. Sometimes they can cover one piece and we can cover another. Sometimes we just go back and forth. Depends what the client needs. We get referrals from the Ontario Works, from the Ontario District Services Board, and refer people there if needed, as the case may be. And the Board of Education, especially our Youth Employment Counsellor, works very closely with the Board of Education. He's at the high school quite a bit, working with the youth, doing intakes and providing services there. So we work very closely with them. Yeah, so that's my rapid fire presentation.